We had bought our first rental like in 2014. I think it's probably 2014. We had basically gone in like debt. We had just got married. So like we didn't have any cash. I spent all my money on, wedding and investing, just like a house, like all this stuff. It was like, oh my gosh, we need to make as much money as possible here.
Welcome to the House Hacking Success Podcast, where you'll learn the path to free rent and financial freedom through real estate. Featuring your hosts, Brad Labrie and Drew Klingler.
What's up, everybody? It's your host, Bradley Labrie, and today I want to talk about the podcast sponsor, Rentometer. Whether you already have an established rental business or analyzing your first rental deal, you know that getting the rent right is crucial to lowering investment risk and optimizing your rental income. That's why the go-to source for rent data is Rentometer. Property investors and property managers rely on Rentometer because it is the fastest and easiest way to access quality rent data for addresses and neighborhoods anywhere in the United States. You can also research current local comps, trends, and property data. Don't take our word for it. Rentometer analyzes over 500,000 rents per month and gets rave reviews from customers. My property manager, myself, and my clients all use Rentometer anytime we are looking to purchase a new property to know exactly what we can get for our properties. Go to rentometer.com today to get your 7-day free trial and save up to 60%. Grow your rental business smarter with Rentometer.
What's up, everybody? Real quick before we start the show. If you go down to the description or the show notes for this podcast episode, there's a link, and that's going to send you to a page that you can download our free ebook on. This ebook is really good. Brad wrote it, and it covers everything that you need to know about house hacking in a very structured order so you can put all the pieces together. All right, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show. I have a great guest today, Brandon Gentile, a good friend of mine. He lives in my market. Brandon, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We're going to get in touch with all sorts of things today. The freedom aspect of financial freedom that you talk a lot about, which I think is a valuable piece to the community of the FI community. But first, let's talk a little about you and your wife. You have 3 kids under 4, and you house hack. That's a huge objection. Let's talk a little bit through your story and the whole house hacking aspect of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's obviously as as you get into this, world, obviously you have, those people in your life, whether it's your spouse or whether it's family or friends, whoever is going to obviously, tell you to try to talk you out of it, try to save you, try to help you. And it's all comes from a good place, right? And they're just trying to look out for you. And that's where being certain in what you're doing is so huge and being steadfast in that. And, it doesn't come out without hitches, no matter who you are or what you're doing. In the beginning, our first rental we ever bought was probably 7 years ago, 25 years old. And that was a challenge, we weren't totally on the same page, and, it caused definite friction between my spouse and I, and it was a learning experience. And now, we're fortunately on a lot more on the same page now, and we do our weekly meetings, and we do, we just actually this year just really got into more of like a full, annual, quarterly, monthly meetings and weekly. We've been doing weekly meetings with each other for a number of years now. But now we're actually doing, a daily 5-minute little huddle in the morning when we get up. We have the kids with us actually, so I'm starting to incorporate them into that when they get up around 7:30. But it didn't start out that way. You're trying to, especially the first few years you're together or married, whatever it is, you're trying to get on the same page. You're trying to figure out what's going on, how you're going to operate. And you can do all the talking in the world beforehand, but once you really start getting into everyday life and you're doing all these things together, you got to start figuring it out. So I always had this plan of house hacking and doing, and I don't even know how it really came about necessarily. I don't remember how I even really was learning about it, just house hacking. I just remember thinking like, man, I want to be able to live somewhere and then have it, paid off, or at least almost paid off, or cash flowing, whatever it is, and have that ability to do that. And I remember just saying like, hey, Jessica, let's do this for a year, and then we'll do another one, maybe a year or two later, and then we'll do it twice, and then we'll get a real house. Well, here we are 5 years later, almost 6 years later, and we're still in the first house that we ended up purchasing, a duplex, side-by-side duplex. And it's really nice. I mean, it was built only 25, 30 years ago. And so it's pretty new. It's just 2 side-by-side units. It's like a big, long ranch in essence. So it's really nice. I mean, I know not everyone has the ability to, some are chopped up houses that are retrofitted. Some are, built to be a duplex like this one is, or a 4-plex, whatever it might be. And you have that ability to go in. Everyone's got different situations, but it worked out pretty well for us. Like you said, now we have 3 kids under 4. That wasn't necessarily the plan to be doing that. But, as we can get into obviously more of just studying the economy and the way things are going, trying to be a realist and trying to look from the positive side and the negative side of things and trying to be somewhere in the middle. I was really, looking at things like, boy, this charade can't go much longer. And really in 2015, 16, I was thinking, I mean, we're due for another correction, and really just didn't foresee Donald Trump winning, I guess, and having things turn the economy a little bit, and thinking, hey, we're due for a dead cat bounce and things are going to crash again. The Fed doing all the things they're doing, printing everything. They're buying assets left and right, bonds. Now they're getting into buying corporate bonds and things like that. And that's just going to continue to increase and get crazier and crazier as time goes on. And I just didn't foresee all of that necessarily. And that's just propped things up longer and longer. It's going to create a bigger crash at the end of the day, which is good for, people like us and people listening. All of us are paying attention. I mean, it's great for us because we're going to be able to pick up, bargain real estate at some point someday. But in the beginning, it wasn't easy getting on the same page. And it's not easy now. We got 3 kids under 4. I mean, it's 1,200 square foot place actually. So it's, pretty good sized place. But, again, there's 5 of us, little kids running around. There's not tons of room, but it serves a greater goal. It serves a greater purpose of delaying gratification, obviously. And then, loading that spring. I always say loading the spring and doing what you need to do in the beginning, and then letting that spring go eventually when you're ready. So that's really kind of the our I guess Jessica and I, our process here in the beginning of what we kind of plan on doing. And we all, with that, I mean, when utilities included and everything, and we only pay a couple $100 a month, so it covers dang near all of our living expenses, all of them, not just your pity or whatever your principal, interest, tax, insurance, but covers dang near everything. So it's an unbelievable way to go, and it's what you guys obviously are always talking about and having people on to talk about. But it's how many more people do you need to have come on and say how great it is to be able to do that?
Well, it's always about relatability, and that's one of the things I really like about you. I mean, you touched on it briefly, the fact that you were able to see a little bit into the future, the fact that things probably couldn't keep going the way that they were forever, but then also the fact that you touched on, you guys didn't necessarily foresee having 3 kids in this, but you can see how if you get into it early enough, you kind of allow life to happen, and then eventually you'll buy probably the place you want in the area you want and things of that nature, the exact same way that my wife and I have done, and we it sounds like we're in a very, very similar situation, but I just like the fact that you above most people I know have the ability to see into the future a lot further than others, and that's why we wanted to have you on the show.
No, I appreciate it, Brad. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, it's my team jokes with me all the time, and they're like, hey, dude, if you didn't look like 100 years in the future, we'd be a lot more successful even than we are now. And it's a blessing and a curse, right? Some people, I don't know what it is. I just love history. Like I said, before, I think when we were off air, I was really into politics as a kid, history, law, the military, things like that, and studying history. And when you start studying, military history, things like that, you start seeing the world from a different perspective, and you see things that they don't teach you in school. You're seeing, capitalism versus socialism, capitalism versus communism, things like that. You're seeing the two, different worlds, and you can see clearly which way the world's trending, which way the United States is trending, going away from capitalism towards, state-run, whether it's socialism, and then communism eventually. It's going that route. It doesn't mean we have to be there or we'll get there someday, but we're already halfway there. So it's just trending that direction. So for years I was trying to fight it, arguing with people, arguing with teachers, arguing with people left and right, and then you realize I gotta fix this internally. So 8 years ago, it's really the crash. 10 years ago, I was a senior at Michigan State, and that's where my life really changed. I was playing hockey at Michigan State there as a senior. I was thinking, am I going to go play pro? What am I going to do with my life? This thing's crashing. I'm watching this happen, and I was like, man, there's a game being played, and I got to figure this game out, because it was very evident there's a game being played. Bailouts are happening left and right. You're being told, well, these things are too big to fail, and blah 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 blah. And well, are they? Is who's bigger than I am, right? Who's bigger than you are? So there's people in the world that are more important than you. There's people more, so you start getting into these things. You're like, really interesting. So you start really getting into diving in this, and that really led into studying currency, studying monetary history, fiscal, policy, all these different things. And so it led from politics for 10 years, from probably 2000, 2010, 2009. And then the last 10 years for me have been really about studying money, studying currency, studying and investing in general. Real estate, obviously a big part of that. Gold and silver, crypto has been a big part of that, obviously. And then investing, doing real estate, house hacking was just one of those things along the way where it's like, okay, this just makes sense to do it. Obviously, you need to do that to kind of springboard us in the beginning of our life together, Jessica and I, in doing that to set our family on the right trajectory. So it was just, it was very simple when you kind of start distilling things down, and then then coming back full circle, like I said, it's one of those things that's a blessing and a curse. Like I see very far into the future, and it's great at times, but then sometimes you, like I was saying earlier, like I thought the market was going to crash, where sometimes you're too soon, you're too early, and so you got to be very careful. You got to try to live on the edge, see both sides of the coin, and then be able to live on the edge and try to make your decisions while seeing both sides. And obviously, that's something that a lot of people have a very hard time doing nowadays, because we're not taught that in school. We're not taught that in pop culture. We're not taught that in the media. It's just one side. That's it. We're going to jam this down your throat, and that's what I'm vehemently against.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so let's take a step back. I want to get into your outlook of the 20s. I want to get into some of the things that we talked about. I mean, you and Robert Kiyosaki have a lot of similarities in your approach to monetary policy and things like that. I want to get into that. Let's go back through your story. You touched a little bit on being at Michigan State. Like, walk us through kind of the last 15 years of your life leading up to where you are now with sort of the real estate portfolio you have and some of the things of that nature. And then we'll go into some of the fiscal policy.
Yeah. So I grew up in Michigan. Obviously, grew up in Clarkston, which is north Metro Detroit. Basically, it's literally you look at a map and it's just outside of like the actual metro area, I guess you'd say. So about 40-50 miles north of the city center. And grew up playing hockey my entire life. It's all I really knew. Went to school, was a really good student when I was young, with all the really smart kids in grade school, and then like into junior high. And then as I got older, I just proceeded to drop off the map more and more, because things didn't make sense, especially in high school. It really culminated in college. Dang near almost not graduating. I think I had like a 2.2 or a 2.4 or something like that. Because like I already mentioned, fighting with teachers, arguing with them, nothing made sense. Why are we here? Why aren't we learning about making money? All these questions that I wasn't taught as a kid growing up. I was blessed. My father was an optometrist. He's an eye doctor. He works for a huge company here in Michigan, and a huge regional company. And so I had a great life. I was able to play hockey. Like I said, coming back to the hockey part, I played hockey my entire life. A very expensive sport, obviously. Traveled all over, and I was in Canada basically probably every other week most of my life, and in somewhere in Canada, in Toronto or wherever. Drove all over the Midwest. Traveled all over doing that for years. Was a big kid growing up, so I was a very good player for most of my life, and just had that fire, that killer instinct, I guess, of I hear Jocko Willink. If anyone listens to him, it's like the feeling of you're sitting there at night asleep, and you wake up in a cold sweat because some guy's in a cave somewhere holding an AK-47 plotting how to kill you. That was me. That was me as a kid growing up, and so I really relate to stuff like that, because I was doing night runs. It was like I'm 14 years old, and it's like, man, someone out there in Canada or a kid in Russia is getting better than I am right now because he's awake while I'm asleep right now. That was me as a kid growing up, and it was like I'm going on a run. It's midnight, and I'm going on a run. My parents would be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going on a run, and shooting pucks all day, every day, things like that. So just constant, you just like, how can I be better? How can I be better? And it's tiring, it's tiring I know people around me. It's tiring for my parents, because there's like, dude, this kid just won't stop. And so they drove me all around, Hell's Half Acre. God bless them. I don't know how in the world people are hockey parents. They're the craziest people, because in hockey, anyone who hasn't played hockey, if you're in hockey, you get like the worst times ever for some reason. Like when you're a little kid, you got to drive the kids to the rink at like 5 a.m, 6 a.m. And then when you're like 13, 14, 15, you get slotted like the latest time slots of the day at ice. It's like, there's only so many ice rinks in the world, right? So like, it's not like a basketball court. You just go play anywhere you want, and you can, there's a hoop, cool, we can go play. Well, there's only so many rinks to go around. So, back in the 90s when hockey was really huge, and, the wings here in Michigan were obviously great, and there's just people playing hockey everywhere. Well, you're playing at 9 o'clock at night, and 10 o'clock we get home. And that's partly why I wasn't doing great in school either, went back into high school and on, because you get home at midnight, like you're going to sleep at 1 a.m. and then you're getting up at 6 or 6:30 to go to school. So I mean, like, being a half a days, trying to do schoolwork and things like that. And then I'm starting to argue with teachers, et cetera. So I was very fortunate. They gave me this path to, play hockey. It was obviously a passion of mine, something I loved. It's all I knew, did it all the time. I ended up playing AAA hockey here in Michigan. And then high school hockey is not the end all be all in Michigan and Minnesota it is, but here it's really AAA hockey. So it'd be like playing AAU for, anyone that's played other sports or things like that, Pop Warner football or whatever it is, like you're playing like travel sports. So AAA. Then I went, when I was 16, my junior and senior of high school, I went and played for the U.S. national team, under 17 and under 18 team, which actually was based in Michigan. So it wasn't based in, Massachusetts or something like that. I was lucky because I was a homebody, very close to my family. So I only had to travel an hour away, or I I lived actually with a billet family in my junior and senior year. I left Clarkston and then moved down to Ann Arbor. The top 20 kids in the country in our age group all moved to Ann Arbor, and we lived there. We worked out there. We'd go to school, and then we'd go to the rink. We'd skate for an hour and a half, and then we'd go work out, and then we'd go run. We'd box. We'd spar, stuff like that. You're 16, 17 years old doing this stuff. It was incredible learning experiences, and you're obviously with elite people around you. So it was very very cool to do. That was my goal. Like looking back, my goal was always to make that team. It was never to make the NHL actually. So when I look back, I realized the power of goals. It's like you got to be careful what you're setting your sights on, and that truly was. I wanted to put the flag on my sweater. I wanted to wear that on my chest, and I was very proud to do that. And that was my goal. So I accomplished my goal. I did that. We won the world championship when I was on the under 18 team against Canada in 2005, and so that was in the Czech Republic. So that was amazing doing that. Then I went off and played for Michigan State at Michigan State for 4 years. We won a national championship my sophomore year in 2007, which was incredible winning it. It was even more fun the month after that back at school. So that was the highlight of that, and so that was incredible. Then I played in the minors for a few years. So when I was I got really badly hurt though. Actually, right before we played Worlds when I was a senior in high school, I got hurt. We were playing the University of Michigan. So when you're a senior in high school, we would play colleges. So we played Michigan State. We're all 17 years old, 18 years old. We're playing the actual college teams, and that was the way USA Hockey set everything up, is to really prepare U.S.-born hockey players for the NHL, as life goes on. So we were very fortunate. We were playing Michigan at Yost Arena, and I got tripped going into the boards, and I went down and basically destroyed my groin, and like full speed went into the boards and ripped my groin muscle on both sides. And so pretty much looking back as the trajectory of my career was going up, and then everything started going down after that, really knocked me out for like a full year, basically. I went to Worlds actually hurt. They shouldn't have taken me. I was just fortunately I was a good kid, so they took me. They wanted me there because they didn't take like 4 other guys in our team, so I was very blessed to be able to go. I ended up playing a bunch. We did great. We won, and then went to World Junior tryouts that summer. Had a great tournament, but I hadn't skated all year, hadn't practiced, really hadn't worked out, couldn't do anything, and ended up missing. Didn't make the World Junior team, obviously under 20 team. And then Michigan State, I only played 17 games of like the 45 games that year because I was hurt. I missed the first 3 months of the season. Then after my freshman year, I had surgery. Finally had surgery. They're like, hey, we've tried everything. We got to open you up and see what's going on. And so, long story long, as my wife likes to say, that really was like the downward trajectory of my career. And again, my goal wasn't to make the NHL necessarily. I never had set that really as a true goal. And it was just like, oh, I think that's going to happen. I expect it to happen. Well, you gotta set those goals. And I think that's one thing to really get out of all that. Ended up playing in the minors for a few years. And that's where it just really got into, okay, I'm studying this. The financial crash had happened when I was leaving state, going to the minors. And then that's when it just became, really me questioning everything, which leads up to the last 10 years of the modern day, which is what is going on? Why am I here? I'm just playing a game. And as you get older, like when you're a kid, you're only like, playing football and stuff like that. It's all you're thinking of. It's like, I'm playing hockey, I'm playing football, I'm playing sports, I'm doing whatever, I'm playing my instrument. It's all you think of, you're not doing anything other than like, oh, that is life. Well, as you get older, and then I'm 22, 23, 24, I'm like, man, there's just a lot more to life. I'm starting to get hurt and things like that. I'd never been hurt in my life before. And I was very fortunate in that regard. So I was starting to get hurt, and I was like, man, what do I want to do? I want to be able to walk and think when I'm 40 years old and have kids and be able to do things with them. And I'm only playing a game, I'm not giving back to society at all. And that's where I started thinking about a lot of different things that, again, like I said to you off air, I'm an odd dude. I mean, you're 22, 23. Why am I thinking about things like that? Yeah. It was just always, when I was 14, I was thought that way. And it wasn't cool in high school. It's cool now to think more like that when you're older, when you have kids and things like that. But when you're 14, your friends, no one thinks it's that cool. It's like, okay, there's that moron in the corner who won't drink the beer because he's thinking about like, whoever, someone's going to come attack the house, like just crazy, ridiculous stuff. So, so anyway, that led me up to like, boom, the crash happened. I'm getting into the minors, and I'm just studying like crazy. There's a game being played on all of us, the monetary, fiscal policy, all these things. What is money? What is going on? And boy, does there a game being played. I mean, it started with reading Creature from Jekyll Island about the Federal Reserve, all this stuff. And you realize very, very quickly, wow, there's a game being played on us every single day. Every time you open your wallet, every time you spend something, there's a game being played, and you can either be on the right side of it or the wrong side of it. And most people are on the wrong side of it. And that's where, it just became an obsession passion in the last 10 years of figuring out how do we, get on the right side of it? How do we become our own bank by house hacking, things like that? How, investing in real estate, becoming your own bank and printing your own currency, then acquiring actual assets with our currency, which is, gold and silver, real estate, maybe high dividend, yielding stocks, things like that, actual assets, actual things of value instead of pieces of paper. So once I started really learning that stuff, then it really just changed my life and my perspective on what I was doing. Really got into real estate. I was in building construction management at Michigan State, actually, and then ended up in like poli-sci and then economics and pre-law and graduated with that. But I really got into real estate over the next few years and started doing realty. Never thought I'd be a real estate agent or get my license, but I ended up doing that. Got into it for a few years, bought our first rentals, stuff like that, had some stuff. But really, 2015, we got our duplex we live in, house hacking that. But then for like 4 or 5 years, I just really got into the gauntlet of just doing retail real estate, telling myself a story really of, hey, the market's super hot, just focus on retail, make good money, and then wait for the crash. And that's really what I've done in the last 4 or 5 years. And then the last year, everything kind of switched again. And I was like, you know what? I don't know how long this market might do this for the next 10 years. And at this point, I don't know, it might. I mean, the Fed's going to keep doing things that they're going to keep propping it up, and it might go for another 10 years. We're going to see some really crazy things happen this decade. And so I was like, you know what? I got to revamp my team. So we've kind of turned the Titanic from a retail team to a little bit more of an investing focused team, wholesaling, helping sellers with their options, whether it's wholesaling, it might be listing retail, maybe a cash offer, quick in, quick out, lease options with them, or whatever it might be, whatever makes sense for them. And then we can go do what we need to do with it on the back end. They get to do what they choose. I mean, really at the end of the day, they get to pick and choose what they want. We kind of give them a menu and they kind of order up what they want. And that's what we've done over the last year to almost 2 years, actually, basically 2 years. We've been doing that. Got great feedback from sellers. And now it's really focusing on back towards rental real estate and putting ourselves in a position to, flourish, not just now, but really when, again, the crash comes, that's when I'm really trying to prep for is that. So
a lot of parallels in our life and in the story. And I love that. Talk a little bit before I want to dig deep into, you talk about Preacher from Jekyll Island. I mean, Kiyosaki, a lot of them talk about that book. I have read it as well. I want to get into a lot of that outlook. Talk a little bit about like what it actually was that you touched on it briefly, but what actually drew you to house hacking? Like what that actually means to you, I guess, more than anything, the fact that you can do all these extra things while you live for free, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Everybody, let's take a quick minute and talk about Rent Ready. Are you new to house hacking and wondering how you find tenants and collect rent, especially while trying to maintain professional boundaries and a shared living space? Rent Ready can help you manage your house hack setup. For less than $9 a month, you can do it all. Fill rooms quickly with sites like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist with a free professionally designed listing page. Find high-quality tenants with TransUnion certified background checks, electronically send, signed, and store leases, and collect rent for the entire lease or set up month-to-month charges. For your tenants, they use Rent Ready's app to complete the application, sign their lease, and pay you rent. They can even submit maintenance requests from the app instead of knocking on your door. Even better, Rent Ready is unlimited, so you don't have to pay per unit or per tenant. Just one flat price, which puts more money in your pocket. And speaking of putting more money in your pocket, Rent Ready has given our listeners a discount to get 50% off any Rent Ready plan when you sign up using our special code SUCCESS at rentredi.com. That's RENTREDI.com using code SUCCESS for 50% off any Rent Ready plan. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, so like 6 years ago, I was just really starting to I think I had been in real estate for a year. So I was doing pretty well my first year. I think I sold 20 homes or something my first year. It was, pretty good year, but I didn't have any, we had bought our first rental in 2014. I think it's probably 2014. We had basically gone in debt. We had just got married. So we didn't have any cash. I spent all my money on, wedding and investing, just a house, all this stuff. And then it was oh my gosh, we need to make as much money as possible here because we couldn't afford to go get a $200,000 or $300,000 house and just be paying a $1,500 a month payment or $2,000 payment. So it was very quickly wow, I have to figure out how to do this. There comes house hacking where it's wow, know what, I've been thinking I want to go the multifamily route in general over the long term anyway. So why not get one and then rent out the other side, live in it, and then you're paying nothing basically. So that's what we've been doing for the last number of years, and just loading that spring and just building up that once the spring explodes, obviously once it's like, oh, you know what, hey, we're going to put someone else in there and go, now we can actually afford our real house or whatever it is. That was really like, it was kind of more of like an oh shit moment. You know, it was kind of like oh my gosh, like we really don't have almost another choice. Like we could, but it wouldn't be comfortable, you know? And it was something where I knew like, hey, we have to do this one thing in order to delay some gratification, in order to get there. And I think the one thing for everyone too, because I know some people, I've had so many people, I know you've had, you know, probably 100 times as many people say this to you over time, which is, you know, hey, I'm so smart you're doing that. Like, I wish I could do that. And I think so much of that is just mental, right? Like, what do people think of me? I'm living in a duplex, or I'm living in a 3-unit or whatever it is. And it's, you know, like, okay, who cares? Like, if anyone's laughing at you because of that, then they probably shouldn't be in your life, number one. And number two,
and a lot of times it's almost as if, I know for me, like I never even considered the fact that I could own 2 houses at the same time. Like, I didn't know anyone that ever had done that, I guess. And I think that's also an objection. Like people, you know, to your point, you're certainly right. There's an aspect of people saying, oh man, I couldn't do that because people make fun of me and people think I'm weird. There's also, I think, other people out there that have never even considered the fact that, you know, themselves could have multiple houses, that's even in the realm of possibilities. And so it's like, man, if I get this place, I get locked down, I'll never actually get the house that I want, you know? And it's part of the message that I like to relay, and bringing on people like yourself really helps, is the fact that these are, you know, you can actually strategically get yourself to that end goal, like you and your wife and my wife, you know, myself and my wife want to do as well, which is, let's let this portfolio pay for our dream home. You know, I mean, our goal is to have a nice piece of land, remote, build a new house. I mean, that's really what we formulated our dream around. But we understand that, you know, we want to take this portfolio and have it pay for that. And I think that's what we're trying to get out to people. And I think there really is a sector of people that could never consider that as a possibility.
Yeah, you know, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, like you said, it's something that either, you know, someone mentions it to you, or just, you know, kind of comes to you, or you read something, you stumble into something. But yeah, like you said, most people don't even know you can do it, you know, and that's, again, why I fought with teachers in school, because, you know, why aren't you teaching us this stuff? Why aren't you teaching us that your assets pay for your liabilities? Why aren't, like, little simple things like this? It's just really incredible that people don't even know that you can do it. And you always say this too. I mean, you have such a great ability to, you know, why not put that low down payment? You know, most investment properties, you have to have, you know, 20% down or whatever, you know, something to that effect, where you got to put more down, have more skin in the game. Where if you can start getting and accumulating a number of properties where you're house hacking them and you're putting only 3.5% down or 5% down or something like that, that's incredible. And we're going into this environment, which you've already kind of touched on, going forward, where taxes are going to be high. You're going to have printing of a currency like we've never seen before in history, where it's just going to continue to happen. So using other people's money to build your wealth, I mean, it's, you know, the Weimar Republic. I mean, we've had these situations where people have had, you know, trillions of dollars all of a sudden in their hands, and they paid off these fixed. I mean, there's very few places in the world where you have 30-year fixed. America actually might be the only place. I'm trying to think. Very few, if any, other places in the world where you have a 30-year fixed mortgage available to you. And the more you can do that now, and then have the dollar just devalue over time, and then pay off that with cheaper dollars in the future. You know, again, like the Weimar Republic or Zimbabwe, places where they've had hyperinflation. It's all of a sudden you got $1 trillion bill and you just paid off, you know, or whatever, even if it's a $10 million bill or something like that, you can just pay off all of your debts at one time, because they're all fixed debts that you had, or just making sure hopefully you have fixed debts. So doing that, and you like you say all the time, and use that to your advantage, the low down payments, use those mortgages to your advantage. I mean, there's a chance that we go into negative rateville, where we've already had that in other places around the world, where who knows? I mean, there could be a time where you're getting paid to hold mortgages. Instead of you paying interest, you're getting paid interest. Instead of you paying $100 a month in interest, you might be getting paid $100 in interest a month. So that, you know, it just, those are the things that are possibly coming. And I think, like you said, most people don't even know about it. So waking people up, because we said this, I think it was off air, taking care of this first. You know, if you start taking care of yourself first, and turning the game and turning it around into your favor, then guess what? We don't have all these problems. We don't have, so much of what goes on in the world is economic driven. It's money driven. You know, the currency, it's the economy. It's the economy, stupid, right? So like all these things are driven off that. If people are stable and they've got this right inside here, their mind, their heart, everything is stable emotionally, physically, financially. Well, guess what? You don't need government to do anything for you. You don't need, Klaus Schwab. You don't need Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anyone doing anything for you, because you're like, get out of my life. Like, I'm great. I don't need you. I don't need government. I don't need other people telling me what to do. I'm an adult. I can figure it out. And that's where, coming kind of full circle, I'm just vehemently against tyranny. I'm very vehemently against anyone telling you what to do or telling me what to do. I know what's best for my life. You know what's best for your life. And I don't need someone else in some, ivory tower telling me what's going on. But it starts in here. It's up to each one of us to be able to know what's going on and figure that out, so that way you can set yourself up appropriately.
Yeah. And Bigger Pockets just had a guest on who's dual citizen between Canada and here, and he closed on a investment property in Canada for 0.9 interest rate. And so anyway, so let's sort of talk about that. You talk about becoming your own bank. Let's talk about what real estate really represents, because it's not only a tax shelter. It's a way, as you said, you're fixing your rate and you're paying it back in the future with cheaper dollars. Things like that. You're getting paid cash flow. Your tenants are paying down your mortgage. Talk about sort of long-term what real estate represents, and then we'll go right into sort of what you see the 20s becoming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it represents freedom. Like we had you on our Freedom is in Free show, our podcast, and it's like I said, I'm vehemently against tyranny. It represents freedom. When you are working a job, that's for some people. It's not for me. To me, that's just a different form of tyranny, because people are telling you what to do. I'm vehemently against that. Some people love it. Some people are fine with that. That's great. We need both people in the world, so that's fine. I'm just totally against it myself, my personality. So to me, it represents freedom. Like you said, getting on the right side of the game. 10 years ago, I'm seeing this crash. I'm seeing these things happen. 9 months ago in March 2020, you're seeing these things happen. People getting bailed out. And you're like, man, like there's a game being played. I need to figure this game out. Well, one of those ways is real estate. Real estate is probably, again, we're probably a little bit biased, but I think it's the best way to do that. You go buy stocks, you get certain advantages, but you don't get depreciation, buying stocks. You don't get all these advantages.
Or leverage, which is the biggest thing. That's what I tell people. If you look at the banks, they accrue the smartest people in the world. It's certainly, the smartest, financial scientists in the world. And the only thing they leverage on a fixed rate, for long term is real estate. You can't get a 30-year mortgage on a stock, right? And so, to your point.
Yep. No, exactly. I mean, there's very little room you have to operate. Like you might be able to use margin, but like you said, the people that are generally using margin in stocks are those, the elites. They're the ones that get to use that generally, So you have all the advantages. You have the really the four different, looking at the income statement, the balance sheet, you've got depreciation, you've got cash flow, you've got amortization and depreciation, and then I think the other one now. But anyway, you have all these ways you can make money and turn the game, like you said, become your bank and start printing your own money. You're now having someone pay down your asset and in giving you money that you're not working for, but also giving you tax advantages, being able to shelter things off of other income you're making that you couldn't otherwise, where you just can't do that as an employee. So that's something where that's what it represents to me. It represents really the best of all worlds. I think all asset classes. I'm a big believer in diversifying in asset classes, though. I mean, the Wall Street tells you diversify, but it's just, have an ETF and have a mutual fund and have stocks, bond, and mutual funds. Well, that's just one asset class. True diversification is having some stuff in different asset classes, whether it's business, real estate, paper, or commodities. Maybe you can throw cryptos and possibly a new asset class there, but like having your money in different places is really different asset classes is true diversification. So that's what it represents to me. It's being out of the system. And I think, I mentioned it earlier, but removing yourself from the matrix and unplugging, that is truly what it is to me. Not being told what I can or can't do. If you're owning real estate and you have, 1,000 units or 100 units or 10 units and you're living your life and you got 10,000 a month in passive income coming in, well, no one's telling you what you can or can't do. You can go do whatever you want. You're not worried about getting fired from your job or things like that, right? So it's you are in control of your destiny. You have all the advantages. The governments really all around the world want you to own real estate. Obviously, they need housing. They're not good in the area of housing, obviously. So they need people like all of us to go own real estate and take care of it. So they give us incentives to do that. So to me, at the end of the day, it's really about freedom. That's what real estate represents.
Yeah, and there's a power of decision making with it too. I think that's one of the bigger things. As we talk to a lot of people that house hack through coronavirus, everything we've dealt with as a country in the last year. There's a power in the fact that most people that house hack, they weren't worried as much because they didn't have a mortgage to pay. Right, their tenants had paid paid the mortgage. And there's a freeing sense to that. There, the mindset that you go into, you make different decisions. Maybe you leave your job earlier. Maybe you get into different asset classes because you have the capital to be able to do that. So there's just such a freeing aspect to it. And that's why I love how much you touch on kind of the mental freedom that most people don't touch on in the community. And I think that's why it's such an important message.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's fun. It's a great point, Brad, because honestly, it's something that it truly is freedom. And we kind of lightly touch on it there, but that's what it is to me. Like real estate's real estate. Like I love real estate, but it's not like, oh, I'm not out there hugging the vinyl siding over here and like, wow, I really love real estate. There's some people like that, but to me, it's all about freedom. It's what it gives you. What does real estate give you? And that's what, none of us are out there. You're not at a job necessarily. And some people are, but some people are out there because they absolutely love to work and they hate being with their family. Well, that's fine. And they're doing that. But most people, they want freedom. Like people talk about, I think when I was younger, and I think a lot of us probably have gone through this or will go through this in their life. When you're younger, it's like, how do I make money? How do I do these things? And you want all this money. You want to be wealthy. You want to be rich, all these things. But what you realize when you get older, and at least for me, I'm guessing a lot of people kind of sense this or have gone through this, which is it's about freedom. It's not actually about money. It's not actually about, making the almighty dollar or bringing in more currency. It's about freedom. If you had $5,000 a month in passive income, or if you had 5 million, but you're free either way, you're going to feel pretty dang good. You're going to feel pretty amazing when you are touched on, like you have the freedom to do what you want when you want. That's the difference. And that's what you start realizing. It's not about, oh, I love real estate. I just love vinyl siding and I love putting on roofs and stuff like that. Like, yeah, there's some people like doing that, but for the most part, most of us are in this because you want freedom. And that's like the dirty little secret that no one talks about. And that's truly what real estate represents.
And the interesting thing, you and I are agents. And so, to touch further on like real estate, it amazes me how many really good agents who have been agents for a really long time, it takes them a really long time to figure that out, right? And they'll come to someone like yourself and say, man, I wish I would have actually invested in real estate rather than just continue to go from 100,000 to 200,000 to 300,000 a year. But never actually, that didn't actually do anything for them. They made more money. And, that's another thing I touch on with people that want to make career changes. Career change is fine. And I mean, there's things that people really want to do it for, great reasons. But also the thing that real estate represents is freedom, right? And so what you have to train yourself is that monthly cash flow far exceeds, making an extra 100,000 or whatever that looks like. And so many people aren't able to balance those two thoughts.
Yeah, you're the nail on the head. Balancing those two thoughts, being on the edge of the coin, right? I mean, Robert Kiyosaki talks about all the time. There's three sides of a coin. There's the both sides and the edge. You have to be on the edge, and that's where we've just lost that. We've lost that ability to do that. We don't teach critical thinking in schools, and people are unable to do that. They're unable to see anything other than what the media tells them, or a family member, or what Yahoo News says. And that is. I've been saying this lately. The people that will win going forward in life, the people that can unlearn what they've seen in the past or learn the past, and then relearn what's coming in the future. And that can mean anything. I mean, we're going into a very digital world. I mean, we haven't even touched the surface of what's going to happen with AR and VR and AI and all these unbelievable things that are going to happen in life. And we're just on the precipice of that. So people are going to be shocked over the next decade to see, really what's coming their way. And when you don't have a foundation, you don't have a core, a higher calling or higher being that you're really following, you just start following whatever, right? When you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And that's the world we see ourselves in. And it's really both sides of the aisle. There's no one's immune to it, and you have to be very careful.
So let's touch on this, because you and I have a very similar thought process on the whole concept of a crash. Like you said, I remember vividly 2015, you had bought that place in Flushing. I was flipping a house in Flushing. And I remember like people like Robert Kiyosaki were really, really on the train of a crash is coming, right? And I remember losing sleep over the fact that, man, I got to get this place done because the crash is coming. Yep. You and I think, as you said, in 2019, you had a little bit of a shift. I did as well, from the fact that, trying to predict crashes to being able to adapt in crashes, right? And I think adaptability may be the most crucial aspect of entrepreneurship. And I see the book behind you, Crash Proof. Let's sort of go into, you and I both foresee rocky times in the 2020s. What that looks like is a lot of people's guess. But, the real economy and what's happening now has started to separate, right? Like, I mean, commercial real estate is really in for a tough time right now. A lot of businesses are in for a tough time right now. But yet the economy, the perceived economy just keeps soaring ahead. And obviously that can't happen forever. But as you said, there's also artificial aspects to this. So instead of focusing on what the economy is going to do, how about we focus on like what individuals can do here and become crash proof? I read that book. It's a great book. Like we don't have to necessarily touch on the book, but just the concept of becoming crash proof personally.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad you brought this up because this is something that I was just talking to my family this weekend, my extended family a bit, and it's. I think we talked off air a little bit about this, and it's something that I just 8 years ago, 10 years ago, it was all about politics for me and what have you. It was all trying to change everyone around you, and now it's in here. Everyone has got to focus internally. It's like we already said. I mean, if you're taking care of in here, what's going on around you doesn't matter. You're electing better people. You're doing better. You have better leaders because you're right. When you get yourself right, then everything else around you is better. And like you said, I think it's not so much about getting into a book necessarily or doing whatever it is, but it's what can I do and what can we do to harden ourselves, become more resilient. Another good book obviously is Prosper, or The Crash Course by Peak Prosperity, Adam Taggart and Chris Martinson. Another book that I'm actually going through again is Prosper, because it's about what things can you do. Because like we said, we can. People could argue if there was things crazy things coming, but it's a foregone conclusion. Like there's going to be insane things that happen that human beings have just never witnessed, whether it's AR, VR, robotics, all the things that are coming. So you better get this right. You better get this right, your head and your heart, because things are coming that just no human beings have ever witnessed or imagined. And that's where you have to have yourself right internally to be able to go forward. Really, to me, it's all about removing yourself from the matrix. And it's, like I said, owning real estate. It's, maybe getting away from a job, but, doing that after you've built up maybe your portfolio a bit and you got your real estate going, stuff like that. Removing yourself from people telling you what to do. It's being outside the system. It's having your currency, your dollars in actual assets that are providing cash flow, or gold and silver, maybe some crypto, things like that. Just removing yourself from central banking, from the matrix, from governments, and just saying, like, I'm out. And then the 5Gs, what is it? Gold, guns, grub, gas, ground, it's real estate, like having all of those things to prepare yourself, because you're going to be mental, physical, emotional, financial, all those things are going to be coming to a head here. And again, those that can unlearn what they've been taught in the past by the mainstream, by the media, by schools, and then relearn this, you're going to win. You're going to win in the future. At least it's going to be a lot less hard for you. It's going to be hard, I think, in the next couple of decades. A lot of amazing things are going to happen with technology. It's going to make our life better in many, many, many ways, whether it's medical technologies, things like that. It's going to be great, but there's going to be a lot of things where, boy, if society keeps going the direction it's going, there's another topic you get into, but the moral compass is gone and no one has any guideposts. And it's just, hey, this man told me that that's good, so we can do it. We got a lot of instances in history where that's not a good idea, because that man or that woman, they change their mind on a daily basis or a monthly basis or a quarterly basis or a yearly basis. And guess what? The whole rules of the world change all of a sudden because one man or woman said, well, I don't believe that anymore. Well, you know what? Off of his head, because I don't believe that anymore. Well, I gave the decree. That's a rule now, so got to go do what I said. That's never good. In reading again, I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, I'm very faith driven. And so now I know not everyone is, but that's where when you read the Bible and you really go into things, you start studying history and studying what actually happened, how societies think and how just the masses work. You start seeing these patterns repeat and repeat and repeat over and over again. So you can start predicting what's going to happen in the future. Like you said, you can't predict necessarily when things are going to happen, but we know, hey, the trajectory of things, like 10 years ago, I would have been fighting against, the government just, picking winners and losers, bailing people out, and, the Green New Deals and things like that. Because on the surface, it's not common sense, where it's like, we're going to destroy all these other things to try to it doesn't make sense. However, nowadays, I'm like, hey, this is going to happen. Society is going to go more toward that. One side can't make their case as to why that's not a good way to just let the free market do it. The other side is making their case more efficiently, I guess, and saying the government should just do all that. And people are siding with that side. So what do? I mean, you can go fight them and, until you're blue in the face, or you can say, hey, how am I going to profit off this? How am I going to invest in this? It's like little things like silver. I mean, I love silver because it's a money. It's in the Bible. It's been money for thousands of years, like gold, but money. So silver is going to be in solar panels. It's going to be in every computer and every digital technology we already have, and then more and more and more. And so those are the things where you're removing yourself from the matrix and you're getting into asset classes and things that are going to position yourself appropriately. Blockchain, obviously, crypto, things like that. Blockchain is going to going to be a massive part of our future. And if anyone thinks that's not the case, I mean, boy, wake up and smell the coffee. So that's just going to get more and more, getting more digitized, which again, it's bad or good. I mean, one keystroke or one bad thing happens and the whole grid goes down. That's another, so that's where real estate comes in handy, obviously, right? Like that's why real estate is so great. You have the 5Gs. If the whole world collapses, then you got your real estate. People can still pay you to live in it. You've got your gold. You got guns. You could barter with it. It could be defense. It's not going to be defense so much. It'll probably be barter. Things like that. But again, those are tail risks. Those are things that are not likely to happen, but they could. But it's good to be prepared. What if there's a tornado? What if there's a hurricane where you're living? What if there's we've seen all these things play out, and people just dismiss them like, oh, you know what? That won't happen to me, or that won't happen to us. We're America. Hey, it's 2020, and it's like you just open the Bible, open a history book, open anything from the past, and you just see these things happening over and over again. So it's, hey, how can we prepare? How can we get ourselves hardened, resilient for what's coming? And again, hopefully nothing bad ever pans out, and half of what we're saying never will. It'll be the other half of things that will, or what have you. But getting more prepared is going to leave you more fulfilled anyway. You're going to feel better. You're going to, like we said, getting your heart right, getting your mind right. You're going to feel better and operate better. At the end of the day, that's what's important, because then you're going to be attracting those things in your life, right? Whatever you're putting out, you're going to be attracting back into your life as well. So if you're more centered and you're more resilient and you have your head on right, well, guess what? You're going to attract more people like that, and you're going to repel the people that aren't. So at the end of the day, you want to be doing it anyway, because you're going to be attracting into your life anyway, people like you. So to me, I mean, that's I think what's coming. I just got this. I'm really into what's coming. Like people like this, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. Like these are the people that are running the world. Everyone goes to Davos. All the the Justin Trudeau's, the Joe Bidens. It doesn't matter. The president of Australia, whatever it is. It's the prime ministers. They all go to Davos. They all meet. They're all in on the game together. And this is what I was talking about 10 years ago. What is the game, and who are the puppets pulling the strings? And that's where I just ordered 4 of his books about the fourth industrial revolution, about all this stuff. We're going to have, by 2030, you're going to have microchips in you. You're going to own nothing. You're going to rent everything. Well, who is that? Who are we renting from? Well, we're renting from them, of course. So all these things, it's how do I position myself to be outside the matrix, to be outside of that world that's coming. Some people might want it. I'm a big guy against tyranny, and I want my freedom. And I'm sure a lot of people listening want that as well. It's why you're in real estate. It's why you're listening to this, because you don't want other human beings controlling your life. So I'm now into not only like, hey, what's coming ahead, but really getting into the teachings of like, hey, these are the people that are mapping the society and mapping world over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So we better start figuring that out so that you can prepare properly.
No, you and I are very similar. I like to consider myself a hedger. I'm very optimistic, and I'm constantly pushing forward. But I think a lot of people, especially younger individuals, focus so much on the upsides of situations that they never also exactly. And then they never also focus on the downside and minimizing risk, right? And when I was on your podcast, I appreciate you having me on, but we touched briefly on the fact that someone like Dave Ramsey, if people are familiar with him, who's no debt, and someone like Robert Kiyosaki, which is generally speaking, he promotes taking on a large percentage of debt. They're not mutually exclusive individuals. They're not actually talking about two different things. They're talking about very similar things. And it's because if you actually look at the mindset that goes into what they're actually talking about, and I try to merge the two, because, as you said, it's not about predicting. I gave that up a long time ago, trying to predict what's going to happen in the world. But it's more about becoming, crash proof, like that talks about, being able to adapt. 2020, no one could have ever predicted, or very few people could have predicted something like this happening. But it's more about adapting to it. And that's where I think the crucial point, and you talked about kind of the monotony of having all these people on to talk about house hacking and being repetitive. But I think it's all about focus, and the fact that we keep focusing on this, because what house hacking actually represents is the fact that you can adapt. Whenever anything goes wrong, you can maneuver quickly because you don't have that giant payment like a traditional house. And that's where, that's what keeps driving us to continue to bring on stories like yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you, bringing me on just to talk about some of that stuff, because I think it's one of those things where, like you said, there's people that are way smarter than I am that can talk about real estate. Like there's way better tax people and this and that. And I think that truly one of the reasons I'm put on this earth, I believe, is to help people see things a little differently and see things a little further down the road. And it's hard to quantify at times. I mean, I question myself a lot, actually. It's just like, hey, what am I doing? Why am I here? Because real estate. Like we said, I'm not outside hugging my vinyl. Like I don't love real estate. It's a vehicle. I really like it. I mean, I do love it. I'm not in love with it, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And
I agree.
So it's one of those things where I know I'm here. Like one of the things I'm doing is we actually just getting my website set up, just brandgentile.com, and I'm already started writing kids books. Like I have 3 kids. You're building your family. There's a lot of people listening that have family. Truly, we have to get our kids right. Like you got to start creating little freedom warriors, people that are not dependent on the government and the elites and all these people around us that are trying to control our life. You got to start with the people that need it the most, which are our kids. And just writing about principles of freedom and morality and all these different things that it's just completely lost. It's just gone. It's just like gone. Like no one teaches it. Like, whatever the Kardashians said, that's fine. I'm good with that. We're gonna watch YouTube for 7 hours a day, or we're gonna turn on the TV and watch 4 football games. And it's like, where are we? It's just bread and circus. It's the Roman Empire. Our timeline is so incredibly similar with the Roman Empire. It's unbelievable. I mean, just the way things are going. There's 7 stages of an empire, and it's verbatim. It's absolutely verbatim. And it's like we're making the same mistakes. And I think what's frustrating is it's so obvious and it's so easy to see because history shows us. And that's what's so frustrating. Is so many people have their heads in the sand and they just don't want to see it. And it's just, I'd rather watch football for 9 hours on Sunday instead of pay attention to my life. And then they turn around and bitch about why my life isn't good. And that's kind of stuff that just drives me absolutely up the wall. And it's, if you want to watch football for 9 hours, great, but don't complain about your life then, that's totally fine. Right. So that's one thing I know. Like I said, I was put here to just help people see things differently, help them remove themselves from the matrix. One of the reasons I stopped playing hockey 10 years ago actually was because I knew I wanted to grow a family. I knew I had to prep people in my life because I saw it was coming. Like we said before, like sometimes I'm a little off on my, the timing, but I know things are coming. Reading history is not hard. I'm not Nostradamus. I just read history. I just open books. I read them. I go back to them and read them again. A lot of stuff you and I have talked about. You do the same, a lot of the same type of things. And it's like, we're not geniuses. Like we just take people at their word. When, a Klaus Schwab says, hey, I'm going to have microchips in all of you guys in 10 years, 20 years. I take him at his word. When someone says, I hate America and I want to destroy all of you, I take them at their word. Like I just say, wow, they must feel pretty passionate. I believe you. So how do we prepare for those things? So that's, at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. I know that's one of the reasons I'm here is promote freedom and to just harden yourself, make yourself resilient. Real estate, house hacking is one of those ways, one of the key cogs in the wheel of becoming self-sufficient and stepping you into that zone of, okay, now I'm a free person, truly free, and I can make my own decisions. I'm not beholden to anyone.
No doubt about it. And my wife and I talk a lot about the fact, real estate as a vehicle. I separated it a lot in my own life because oftentimes I ponder a lot, like what is it that I'm actually here for? Because I know that real estate is awesome. I love it. I love the fact that you can take something that, people view as, downtrodden and not a great property and turn it into something that people really inspires them and they love it. Like that's a lot of fun for me. But it's also, it also is just, it is just concrete and wood material, at the end of the day, and we're here for so much more. So one question we like to ask, because I think it's so important, is that so many people we get on this podcast, your podcast, they set out to do something. And in this case, it's house hacking, right? We get a lot of people that set out, they want to house hack, they see the benefits. But it seems like the 80-20 rule applies to, this as well, where maybe only 20% of the people that actually set out to become house hackers actually do it. Why is that? What is your take on why is that? Why do so few people actually do what they set out to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of it is goals. Like we talked earlier, one of the things I hope people can learn from my story is goal setting and truly doing that. I failed at that when I was younger in life. And I say fail, but I believe there's a plan for all of us. And I did follow my plan. I didn't set goals though. Maybe my life turned out differently a little bit, but I wouldn't have the family I have. So there's reasons things happen, but goal setting is number one. But also I think one of the other big reasons is people letting the naysayers, the noise get to them, and they always say, like, I used to, for anyone who watched the show back in the day, Deadliest Catch, when catching crabs in Alaska, those crabs can get out of the cages. You look at the cages and it's like, it's a very obvious question of like, how do they not get out of that cage? And it's the simple answer is because the other crabs pull them back in. So when one of them is trying to escape, and that could be you in your life, you grew up with a family and friends, whatever it is, and then you're trying to step outside and do something different. And we talked about this earlier too. People are trying to help you. They think they're helping you. They think they're saving you. They don't want you to get hurt. And life's about getting hurt. And that's, again, another topic for a different day, but we have lost that in life. Everything's about equal everything in life. And that's not life. If that was the case, we'd all be robots. We'd all be machines. We'd all look the same. We'd all act the same. It'd be the exact same thing. But that's not life. Life's about getting hurt. Life's about getting knocked down. And when you're trying to level the entire playing field and everything in life is completely the same, well, you're now depriving me or depriving you of learning. How the hell do I learn if I've never failed, if I've never done anything? I don't learn. I don't know what's right and wrong. I don't know what's good and bad. I don't know what's up and down. I don't know if I don't know how to learn. So when you're trying to just crush everything and flatten everything, you're depriving human beings of the way to learn. I mean, when a kid's falling down over and over again trying to walk, you don't say, hey, stay down. We're not complaining saying, well, that's not fair. My kid can't walk when he's 6 months old. How come the other kid can walk when he's 1.5 or when he's 6 months old? It doesn't matter. The kid's going to learn. That's how we fall. We get down, we get up, boom, over and over again. Repetition. So I think that's really at the end of the day, again, what you try to promote, I try to promote is thinking differently. Is house hacking is one of those cogs in the wheel. It's not the end all be all. We're not trying to house hack the rest of our life. Obviously, we're trying to use that as a stepping stone to build our portfolio, to use debt to our advantage, use good debt, and springboard us to freedom and to get to a different level. So that, I think, really at the end of the day is what it's really all about.
For sure. I agree 100%. Now, books. You obviously have a huge library behind you. For those that are just on the podcast, I mean, he's got a ginormous library of books behind him. I know you read a ton. I do as well. Mindset and business specific. Like, what are some of the books maybe that set you up, or some of the ones that you're looking at now that really helped you to? You talked about hardening your mind, and one of the things that we're trying to do with this community, as you said, so many people try to pull you back to position, and there's so many great metaphors for that, and you mentioned a couple of them, and that's really what this is. Like, what are some of those mentality books or business books that really help you to solidify your thought process?
Yeah, The One Thing by Gary Keller is probably one of my top 3 books of all time for sure. It could be number one, honestly. I've always had a hard time just with organization in my life. I'm a person who needs to be organized, but by nature, I wasn't really taught how to be organized. I wasn't, when you're playing sports, as you know, like a lot of things are done for you. Like, here's an itinerary, just show up. A lot of that is done for you. So you lose a lot of that. And so The One Thing to me was just such an unbelievable book because, I mean, the whole premise of the book literally is, one thing. So doing the one thing that pretty much deems everything else unnecessary. So you're doing the one thing every day. And so many of us, and I'm as guilty as anyone else, we get up and you start checking things off a list, but they're D tasks, C tasks, B tasks. We just feel like we feel good, but we're not crushing that one task, that one thing or whatever it is that would really render the rest of that useless. And so if you're doing that one thing a day, that would take everything else out with it. So like, for instance, one thing for me actually is, I guess you would call it a task maybe, but we talked about, hockey growing up and stuff like that, and in sports, and you doing football. I did hockey. I mean, the one thing to be an elite level athlete and play in college or whatever, play in the pros, you have to be very disciplined. Well, the one discipline I didn't have in my life, like eating, no problem. I stopped drinking pop when I was 12. Literally one day I was like, pop's not that good for you? Cool. Won't have it again. I think I've had it like 10 times since then, since I was 12 years old. And it's been in like alcoholic drinks. So I never once have gotten, it's just because I knew it was bad for me. I take, my body takes water. A car takes gasoline. Why would I put Kool-Aid in it? So my body takes water. Why would I put pop in it? Same concept. So like, very easy workouts, everything, like so easy. It was just, the discipline was always there, never an issue. It was going above and beyond, no problem. The one problem I had in my life is sleep. My family is night owls by nature, and my extended family always joke about my immediate family actually, and my brother. It'd be like 1 a.m, and something. One of them would call my father, and then like a 3-year-old in the background would be like, "Hey, Aunt so and so," and they'd be like, "Is that Brandon? Is he like, oh yeah." So like that, my one thing in my entire life has been probably because of hockey. My family's night owls, and then hockey, like I said earlier, you'd be getting home so late and then have to get up so early the next day. It really was like this perpetual cycle. And then as you got older, there were games, you have 7 o'clock games, 7:30 games, 8 o'clock games. You're getting home and you're wound up, and it's 1, 2, 3 a.m. And unlike football, you're doing that once a week. So you can, maybe a day is off or something like that, where you have a day. Well, in hockey, you might have 2, 3, 4 of those a week. So now your entire week is just constant repetitious just, terrible schedule. And so that one thing has been the one thing I really just started clearing up the last year or two of my life. I'm still not perfect at it, but it's not, but now it's going to bed at 9, 10. I will say the one thing that really changed my life was having kids. And the more kids you've had, the easier it's become, because boy, the kids get up and they're up. And if you don't get your stuff done before they get up, you're out of luck. So that one thing has really helped change my life, which is children, actually, which I always say that's, they're the biggest asset in your life. They're not, some people look at them as the biggest liability, but they're the biggest asset. They become your little warriors. They are the ones helping you actually get better if you're open to it and seeing that and making you more disciplined. That is the one. So the one thing, that is the one thing that book has helped me so much, because I'm like, man, if I just change my schedule around, everything else would become pretty much, wouldn't have to work on it almost, because I have so many disciplines in so many areas. But that one thing was destroying, really, it kind of ruined my hockey career, to be totally honest with you. I mean, there was times where I was a kid who was going to pregame skates and things like that, and then we have optional ones. And later in my career, I was just completely skipping like optional pregame skates, things like that, because I'd be going to bed at like 2, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, night for a game. And then I would miss, I'd sleep until like 10 or 11, miss the morning skate. And I was just a complete mess. And I look back and I realized I wasn't supposed to be playing hockey at that time. It just took me a number of years to kind of catch up to where the rest of my thinking was. And so that took a while, but again, sleep and just getting your schedule right. And it's, again, I mentioned Jocko earlier, but Jocko was one of those guys too, where hammering the sleep thing. And that's what one of his big shticks is to, get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And boy, that coming from someone who literally used to go to bed at 4 a.m., getting up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. is literally one of the most unbelievable things you can do for yourself. And then obviously going to bed early at 9 p.m. or 10. But that is the one thing with the One Thing book, obviously, that really has changed my life for the last handful of years.
Such a great book and a great concept, because, I often get a lot of people asking me sort of for advice being young. And one of the things that I struggled with for sure, is shiny object syndrome. Mm-hmm. And, it's very, very, it was very, very easy for me I jumped from thing to thing, and real estate was kind of a core, but I always was doing all these other things as well. And one thing I did several years ago was I decided to cut everything off, and literally I felt like real estate was the thing that was for me, and that all the other things were fantastic. But if I didn't focus in on something, I would never actually get anything done. And so I often get asked, about Bitcoin and things of that nature. I'm like, man, cryptocurrency, I study it and things of that nature. But if I were to focus on different things, I would be in all sorts of different things and I'd never get anything done. And that book really quantifies it, that, you gotta figure out what it is. What is that one thing for you? Focus on it and then go do it. And then eventually, you can go on to the next one thing. But it's such a great book.
Yes. But you hit the nail on the head too. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Brad, because that focus is the number one thing for entrepreneur. Anyone probably listening to this basically is going to have shiny object syndrome. Some people more than others, but if you're entrepreneurial minded at all, you're going to have that. It doesn't matter, because you're just seeking, you're learning, you're trying to find new things. And like we already both said, there's still a lot of us trying to find out what is that true calling. And even if you kind of find it, I feel like I've kind of found mine. You're still questioning, you're still thinking, because you're curious. We're curious people, we're human beings. So focus is huge. And I think that is really an understated thing. That is, like, if I had a tip to leave somebody, it would be that. I mean, it'd be focused, be waking up early, making sure your schedule's right, because that really sets the foundation for your day, which obviously those days compound and sets your month, your year, and focus. Yeah. Find the thing that you really like, you love, you're passionate about, whatever it is, and focus, all in on that, and you will be successful.
What about real estate book?
For me, it's clearly the cliche one is Rich Dad Poor Dad, but that's not mine. Mine was actually another Robert Kiyosaki book and Donald Trump book. So one of them they wrote together, which was Why We Want You to Be Rich. That's actually the one that I kind of like it more than Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was the first one I actually really read like 10 years ago. That really it was one that blew my mind open. And I don't know. I think there's more charts and graphs, I think, in there, stuff like that, which is probably what I like more. But that was the one book. I knew who Donald Trump was. I was in the store. I was grocery shopping one day. I'm trying to think. I was either at Michigan State or it was my first year of pro. And I was grocery shopping, and of course, I find myself in the book section at the grocery store. And I'm like looking, and it's just in the bargain area. And it's like $3 and it's Trump and Kiyosaki. I had no idea who Kiyosaki was. And I knew who Donald Trump was. And I'm like, oh, okay. I love real estate. I mean, I was in it in school, building construction management. I always loved real estate. So I'm like, I'm going to get this $3. And so I read it, and Kiyosaki, just opened my world up to him. He wrote, a good chunk of it, probably 67% of it. And it just blew my mind open. As assets pay for liabilities, money working for you, on and on and on. And I was like, oh my goodness. It was like a year or so after the market crash had happened. And I'd always been like searching for those answers, but never knew it existed, never really knew what I was thinking until I read that book. And I was like, this is what I've been thinking of my entire life. I just had no one that explained it to me. And it's like, hey, maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you should be an investor, maybe whatever it is, like it just blew my mind open. And I was like, I knew that just because I still to this day, I don't know what I want to be in life, right? We just kind of talked about that, but like everyone's like, what do you want to be? What is your major going to be? And I changed it like 4 times. It's like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea what I want to do. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to, do whatever. I thought I was going to be a lawyer for a second. I love reading. I love law, but like, I didn't want to do any of those things. So that book really kind of changed my life. It was really one of the big inflection points. Watching the crash, and then a year later, finding that book was just mind blowing, and seeing that. And then like a year or two later after that, probably 2011 or 12, I picked up Mike Maloney's book, who was a Rich Dad Advisor at the time, which was The Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, which is, I think, the number one best-selling precious metals book of all time. So that was in the other inflection point, like 3 inflection points, like one each year for like 3 years. And that was like, just turned me on to like, I love history already, currency, monetary history, all of that. And those like books right there were just unbelievable to me, where I was like, wow. So then the real estate book was Why I Want You to Be Rich. And then Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, which, it's got the gold and silver, filter to it, but it really talked about history and just how you can, the cool thing I like about Mike Maloney was everything was, hey, it's not, he's got a gold and silver dealership, but it's really like, hey, how do I use this cycle we're in to then actually buy high dividend yielding stocks and investment real estate, rental real estate? That's when you want to use these cycles to your advantage. So you can come out of one asset class that when it gets overvalued, you sell out and you jump into the undervalued asset class. And that's where I was like, oh my goodness, like why in the world? And then I got super pissed off because I'm like, why wasn't this taught to me in school? So there's like a year or two while I'm reading these books, I was like super mad. So I was like, I knew it. I followed these doctors followed the teachers for years. And this is all the proof that I needed. So those are the books.
No, I got to meet him at a New Orleans investment conference, one of my favorite conferences. And he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, I love him. You're talking about Mike Maloney, right? Yeah, great. I mean, unbelievable guy. And that's a good conference. That's probably a conference most people have not been to. If no one's been to that, I mean, I would just at least try to watch it virtually or do stuff like that, because that is a whole different realm as well. And a lot of what we just talked about for the last hour and what you talked about on your podcast, right? Just different thinking, removing yourself from the matrix. So.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, Kiyosaki's there, Peter Schiff's there, Maloney's there. So many great people. And the whole aspect of the conference is around not only hard assets, but the whole mindset around it, and cycles and geopolitical pressures on currencies. And just, it's an incredible conference. It's not for everyone, I suppose, but for people like you and I, and probably the people that listened all the way to the end of this podcast would probably be more inclined. I mean, it's a great podcast. And I think because I actually, this year was virtual, of course, everything was virtual, but I think you could still buy into the 2020, virtual one. So if anyone's interested, it wasn't very expensive. I can't remember what it was, maybe $100 or whatever. But very, very affordable and a great conference.
Yep, it is. It's that, and then the red pill one as well too. I've not been to the red pill one, but that would be awesome. Similar type of event, obviously.
I've heard Kiyosaki talk about it.
Yes, I think G.Ed Griffin, the one who wrote Creature from Jekyll Island, I think he's the one that puts that on.
Okay, perfect. So kind of wrap it up, your thoughts. Do you have any parting thoughts you have here kind of on house hacking and just solidifying mindset and stuff and all the things you preach on for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, think for yourself. I mean, this is we're entering a time. If people can't see a theme through everything we've talked about here, it's remove yourself from the matrix, think for yourself, and do your own homework. So many people just, like we said, flying by the seat of their pants and watching football for 9 hours, which it's fine. We all have our vices and all the things we do, but spend some time on yourself. I mean, I tell my team this every single day, spend some time up here. The economy is between your ears. It's not, what Klaus Schwab says or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whatever. It's in here, like you can either have the greatest year of your life or the worst year of your life, and it's all up to you. It's completely up to you. And it's all in here. So, block out the noise, block out the naysayers. We talked about just, what people may or may not do or why why they might not do house hacking, because what people are going to think of me, what are my friends going to say? Or maybe you already have a house. I mean, there's people, you know way more than me, but like they live in a regular house, maybe a single family home, and then they go back and house hack. So, like if anyone pays attention to like a Gary Vaynerchuk, right, in the marketing world, you're right. Like he talks about that all the time, like downsize, like go backwards, take a step back to go 2 steps forward. I mean, you're not limited to anything. Again, it's in your mind. Everything is up here in between your ears. It's the only thing holding anyone back from anything they want to do. It's noise, whatever it is. It's all up here. So that would be my advice to anyone is know what you need to do, because I think that's part of it. Like we all know, like when we're going to take a test, and believe me, I know this. When I studied to take a test, I felt great. And when I was trying to cram the night before, like I go into the test, I feel terrible, right? And we all have had those feelings. So it's the same thing in life. You have to do some of your own homework. So that way, you have that conviction, like, hey, this thing is going to happen. Then guess what? It's very easy to actually stay in things. I've had, I mean, you too. You have people say things to you negatively, and you shrug it off. You're like, okay, well, hey, that person might not understand. They might not have studied or whatever it is. So it's very easy to kind of keep following your goal when you're convicted, you've done your own homework. You're going to be open to other people, obviously, but if someone is just randomly kind of like, oh, yo, you live in a duplex or you live wherever, it's like, you laugh at them, you oblige them, you amuse them for a second, but you just keep going doing your thing, you just keep doing your thing because you have a long-term goal. So like I said, think for yourself, remove yourself from the matrix, think for yourself, and stand in your convictions. That's my advice.
Absolutely. No, great advice. Brandon, I want people to learn more about you and your podcast and all that. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, probably the best place is brandongentile.com. We really just got that going here recently, so we're still working on it a bunch. But if you go to the bottom, I mean, all of my social media is there, so you can find all those links there to all of our social. And yeah, so that's it there. Probably the best way to find me right now.
Cool, man. We'll link that in the podcast description. We'll promote a lot of just this and on Instagram and some of the media outlets that we use, and just get the word out, because I think it's important. I think what you touch on a lot is important. I think so many people attach themselves to whether it's political leaders or thought leaders, and they move and sway to everything someone says, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter what side of thought process you're on. And your whole message of freedom, detaching yourself from the matrix, being able to think independently. And I think it's very important to grow this think tank that we have here of people, just the nature of, emotions involved with it. People people that really care about you, pulling you back. So creating this community, which is what we are attempting to do, and along with yourself and a lot of other great people, creating this community to be able to grow thoughts and ideas and be able to get people out of the matrix is really what this is all about.
Yeah, it truly is. And I appreciate you having me on, Brad. I mean, you guys are building an incredible community, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. And keep doing what you're doing, because we need, God knows, we need a lot more people like what you guys are doing, and to, like you said, promote freedom, and just promote free will. Like we've been given free will, right? So think for yourself, and find what it is. When you do think for yourself, find out what it is, and focus, like you said, focus on what it is you're trying to do, and stand on those convictions. So I appreciate you having me on, Brad.
For sure, man. Well, we appreciate it, and we hope you have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.